Today, we're covering the mechanics of America's Seed Fund, specifically STTR grants and the 2026 legislative overhaul that just changed the game for founders and researchers. We're going to look at how this funding flows, who it's actually for, and why the rules have shifted. So first off, these grants should not be a standalone plan for imminent expenses like payroll, because there's a moderate competition and the funds can take up to 9 months before they're released. This is the catch of federal grants. It's incredible funding, but it can't really be used as a quick fix for immediate operational expenses. Along with timing and competition, there's also research requirements attached to these grants. So let's dive into the mechanics of these grants and see why founders chase them so aggressively. Essentially, these are federal grants for small businesses to develop technology aiding government missions. These are for big players like the DoD, NIH, NSF, and NASA. There are billions of dollars essentially sitting there waiting for small businesses capable of solving complex R&D. This capital is entirely non-dilutive, so you never have to give up equity or board seats, and you keep your IP rights. The government just gets a limited license to use what you build. So to really understand the STTR program, we have to look at how it differs from SBIRs. The biggest differences come down to employment and collaboration. With an SBIR grant, you keep the work entirely in-house, meaning your principal investigator and your lead researcher must be primarily employed by your startup. But the STTR program explicitly requires a formal partnership with a nonprofit research institution like a university. If you're spinning tech right out of an academic lab and your co-founder is still on the faculty, the STTR program was built for you. And that brings us to the mandatory STTR workshare rule. You can't just slap a university's name on your application to look good. The division of labor is highly regulated. Your startup has to do the heavy lifting, doing at least 40% of the work. It's a mandated partnership carefully designed to bridge the gap between an academic discovery and actual commercial viability. So let's cover the funnel of these grants and how each phase actually works. Securing this money is far from a one and done event. It's a very specific multi-stage funnel. You don't just get handed $1 million on day one. First, you start at phase one, called the feasibility study. This is usually between $50,000 and $275,000, and it lasts 6 to 12 months. And if you can prove feasibility, you graduate to phase two. This is serious development money, often between $750,000 to $1.8 million over a couple of years. Finally, you aim for phase three, which is the commercialization phase. This phase unlocks something incredible, which is a pathway to direct sole source government contracts. That sole source pathway means government agencies can buy directly from you without competitive bidding. For defense startups especially, this is the golden ticket of the entire process. And based on the late 2025 program lapse, you might be skeptical that this funding is going to stick around. But the rules governing this whole funnel just saw their biggest restructural overhaul in a decade. There was a brutal 6-month freeze in 2025. Roughly $4 billion in annual funding stopped moving, leaving something like 6,000 small businesses in limbo. But in April 2026, the Small Business Innovation and Economic Security Act was signed into law. It reauthorized the program all the way through September 2031. This gives founders an unprecedented 5 years of certainty to finally build these grants into their long-term strategic plans without worrying about another shutdown. This program revamp is huge for founders, and some breakthrough awards are sized up to $30 million for critical national priorities. The new funding made possible by this reauthorization inevitably comes with more screening and hurdles that founders have to jump through. There's now strict proposal submission caps, and most importantly, there's mandatory screening for foreign affiliations across multiple watch lists. STTR grants are some of the best non-dilutive money out there, but they come with real costs. Phase 1 win rates sit around 10 to 20%. Compliance requirements are also very heavy, and the timeline from application to cash in the bank can stretch close to a year. If you've got deep tech spinning out of a university and the patience to write out a long funnel, this funding is hard to beat. But if your runway is short, that same funnel becomes a liability.